All right. So I'm here with my aunt, and I'm going to be interviewing her on how she was involved in the farming back in the day. So, what kind of farming did you help with?
My grandpa owned a dairy farm and he had over 200 acres and we milked cows and then he did the hay, he did all the food production for the family. So there's a long family heritage.
Okay. How were you involved? Did you do like milking of the cows?
Sometimes when I was able to go down there, we would help him to milk. And it used to be whenever he was real young that they would milk them by hand. And then when a cow would get an infection, they would know how to treat it themselves. And sometimes with milking a cow on a regular basis, they sometimes got infections. And then you couldn't use that milk. You would have to put it into a pail and dump it out. And then as things progressed, they had big old milkers that they would come in, and instead of doing it by hand, they would have this machine that they could put up on the cow, and it would actually do the pumping and the suctioning. And then it would send it into this big old tank that was all stainless steel. It had to be sterilized every day, and that was one area that us kids were not allowed to go into.
Yeah.
Because if anything happened to Papa's milk, then that was a lot of money out of his pocket. So we knew to leave that area alone. But then when you'd bring them in, you'd have to bring them in shifts to milk them. You couldn't bring all of them in at one time. And then you would have to feed them. Well, now they have these huge long barns that they can bring all these cattle in and do it at one time. So it's a heck of a lot faster. One thing that stayed the same is that you have to do this twice a day, morning and evening, 365 days a year. So you don't take off for Christmas, you don't take off for holidays. So that part has not changed at all.
How is the equipment different? Like you said, with doing it by hand, and then how does it make it faster?
Because they could probably milk a cow in less than a minute, maybe 2 minutes. And if you did it by hand, it takes like 5. So it takes a lot. And if a cow wasn't very full and she wasn't producing a lot at that particular time, then it may even take longer. But now it's a lot more productive because they can get them in, get them out, kind of like shift work, and they get a lot more production and a lot more quality of the milk in the same amount of time.
Now, whose farm was this?
This was my grandpa's. And back then, they didn't have formal advertising. They didn't have digital advertising. So we would take his cows. He had both meat and dairy cows. And we would take his cows to the county fair. And I actually got to show those. And that was a big thing to be in 4-H back then. And that was a formal way of advertising for the farmers because he would put up this huge sign up above his cattle area, and each farmer had a specific area, and they'd take hay and section it off so people would know that was his section. And then that big sign that said CO Hill, Reedy Creek Farm, that was their way of advertising, so if somebody wanted something.
Yeah. Did he do just cows, or what did he do, like his own hay or stuff like that?
Yes, he also grew all of the farm vegetables and the food for his family. We had pigs, and I can remember going up to the pigs and after supper or after lunch. Grandma cooked 3 meals a day, and you would take the leftovers or the slop, she called it, and you'd go throw it to the pigs. And they were pretty well ways up the road, up the drive. Their drive was real long because the pigs were very smelly, so you didn't want them close to them.
No.
But then also they would kill their pigs when it was time for them to need, say, bacon and sausage and liver mush and stuff like that. And I can remember seeing the pigs out in the backyard hung up by the tree where they would slaughter them. And then they would take them inside, and all of this processing happened on Grandma's table. And so then that would be put up for the family to have food, especially during the winter months. A lot of this was done in the summer. Summers were extremely hot and very busy. And as far as like having beef for the family, they would also slaughter some of the cows. They had meat cows and they had dairy cows. And once they slaughtered them, they also had what we called a smokehouse, and it was a small section of a wooden barn-like area, and it was covered in salt. And they would cover this meat with salt, and they would hang it to cure. And it's totally different from today, how we go to the grocery store and we just pick up meat and we take it home and cook it. You don't worry about the processing. You don't have to worry about if it's cured right. You didn't have to worry as much back then about all the pasteurization of the milks and all the requirements that are done for meats and processing now as what they did back then. Back then, none of that was known about.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're good. Thank you very much
You're welcome.
for sharing your experiences.
You're welcome. We loved it.